Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Blue Wave. I'm your host, Max Lopez. It's really great to have you here. We got a great show prepped for you today. So we're going to be starting off with Trump boasting about overturning Roe v. Wade to a group of evangelicals right after Mike Pence spoke to the same group and boasted that he would implement a 15-week abortion ban. Trump couldn't let Pence have the limelight with this evangelical crowd. So he showed up to remind everybody that he is in fact the one that implemented the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. So I'll get into a little bit of why and why Trump doesn't have any strategy really at all to the way that he approaches his campaign. It's kind of just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and that's pretty much his entire strategy. Next, we're going to be looking at Ron DeSantis's campaign. Hogan is saying that Ron DeSantis's campaign over. Oh my god. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a bit, you know that I do not hold any punches when it comes to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and it hasn't been looking good for speculation about really if he has any chance at all to defeat Trump. This is probably the furthest I've heard anybody go as of yet, saying that his campaign is nearly over shortly after it launched on Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk. Next, we're going to be looking at Antony Blinken on Meet the Press this morning, talking about the Russian chaos that has been unfolding in the last couple of days. We'll get into some of what's been happening, and we'll look at Blinken's response to the chaos that has been unfolding. And lastly, we're going to be looking at the dangers of AI generated images in politics and how we're already seeing some examples of AI generation being misused to misrepresent and to misinform and to distort the truth to one's own agenda, and how there's already speculation and attempts to regulate and put laws in place that regulate how AI generated images can be used in campaigns for office to become elected officials. So I think it's something that in the coming years there's going to be more and more questions and attention paid to this particular issue. Okay, but let's get started with, like I said, with Donald Trump to evangelicals himself as a Christian crusader who helped end Roe v. Wade. Former President Donald J. Trump told an evangelical gathering that no president had done more for Christians than he did. So it's been a year since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and since then we've heard just about every single thing on the issue that you could hear from Trump. We've heard Trump blame the GOP for being too harsh on abortion and saying that it was their fault for losing the 2022 midterms because they're too harsh on abortion and they're too traditional, and that the reason his candidates, in his mind, and the reason that he is still doing good with the GOP is that he's not as harsh on abortion or whatever. But what people would point out when he tried to make those claims is that, dude, you appointed the people that overturned Roe v. Wade, so you can't go and blame the Republicans now for being too harsh. But now here we have Trump saying that, championing the fact that he appointed the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. So, where does this guy stand? And then he gets asked about a national abortion ban, and again, he doesn't outright say he's for it or he's against it. He just knows that he's glad that he's implemented the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. So you never quite know what you're going to get from Donald Trump when it comes to this issue of abortion. So it says 1 year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, former President Donald J. Trump reminded a gathering of evangelical activists in the nation's capital how he had shaped the court's conservative supermajority that ended nearly 50 years of constitutional protections for abortion. Appearing at a Faith and Freedom Coalition gala in Washington on Saturday night, he cited his appointment of 3 of the 6 judges who voted to strike down the law as a capstone of his presidency. And he cast himself as an unflinching crusader for the Christian right in a meandering speech that lasted nearly 90 minutes. No president has ever fought for Christians as hard as I have, he said, adding, I got it done, and nobody thought it was even a possibility. It was his 8th appearance by Mr. Trump in front of the group, whose support he is seeking to consolidate in a crowded GOP competition for the 2024 nomination, though he is the frontrunner in the field. He said that Republican voters were skeptical of claims by some of his rivals that they were stronger opponents of abortion, and suggested that the skepticism had arisen on the campaign trail. A woman stood up and said, "This guy ended Roe v. Wade. How the hell can you go against him?" Mr. Trump said. A few thousand activists gave Mr. Trump an ovation when he mentioned the ruling, which he said gave conservatives leverage in the ongoing battle over abortion rights. Several hundred more filled an overflow room. You have the power for the first time, he said. Virtually all of Mr. Trump's rivals in the crowded GOP field appeared during the group's 3-day Road to Majority conference at the Washington Hilton. The lineup included Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence. At a rally in front of the Lincoln Memorial earlier on Saturday, commemorating the court's ruling, Mr. Pence urged anti-abortion activists to continue fighting to place further restrictions on the procedure at the state level. I'm going to grab a napkin here. 1 second. Save the babies and we will save America, he said, adding, as the old book says, that many more are with us than are with them. Statistics have shown that that is simply inaccurate, and that a large majority of people are in favor of abortion rights. If you go watch my video from yesterday or 2 days ago now, it'll illustrate that fact. In a speech at the gathering a day earlier, Mr. Pence called on the entire 2024 Republican presidential field to pledge support for a national abortion ban at 15 weeks, a ban more extreme than what Trump has backed so far. David Porter, a Republican from Newport News, Virginia, who wore a Walk with Jesus hat to the rally, commended Mr. Trump for his imprint on the judiciary. He's my guy right now, he said. Mr. Trump sought to align himself with the faith community and said it was under attack, much like he was. Tonight, we're warriors in a righteous crusade to stop the arsonists, the atheists, the globalists, and the Marxists. Each indictment, he added, was a great badge of courage. I'm being indicted for you, he said. Mr. Trump's alliance with the Christian right is a study in political opportunism, one that has yielded prodigious dividends for both. In 2016, evangelical voters helped propel Mr. Trump to successive Republican primary victories in South Carolina and other key states, giving him a pathway to the nomination and ultimately the presidency. The influential electoral bloc demonstrated its willingness to look beyond the impidities of the twice-divorced Mr. Trump, whose extramarital affairs had long been tabloid fodder, and who came with a history of supporting abortion rights in the 1990s. Evangelical voters bought into Mr. Trump's populist narrative, as well as his pledges to carry out a hardline reset of the nation's immigration and trade policies to appoint pro-life justices. The group collected its returns during Mr. Trump's presidency when he cemented a supermajority on the Supreme Court. Mr. Trump has heralded his remake of the nation's highest court as he once again seeks the support of evangelical voters, this time beset by a cascade of indictments, including one in a hush money case involving a porn star. But even as Mr. Trump has highlighted his role in the right's fight to end abortion rights, he has repeatedly sidestepped questions about whether he would sign a federal abortion ban if Republicans managed to steer one through the divided Congress. Mr. Porter, the anti-abortion activist from Virginia, said Mr. Trump's evasiveness was concerning. Either you stand for what you believe or you don't, he said. Mr. DeSantis, who spoke on Friday at the Evangelical Conclave, has sought to stake out the right flank against Mr. Trump on abortion policy. He criticized the former president for suggesting that a 6-week abortion ban Mr. DeSantis had signed in Florida was too harsh. So this is really Trump's egotism and narcissism on full display here, because it's the political benefit of his position is that he could turn towards suburban women and turn towards the more middle America and go, sure, I might have overturned Roe v. Wade, and sure, we might not have that anymore, but at least I'm not as harsh as wanting to ban abortion after 15 weeks or whatever. And at least I don't want a 6-week ban like Ron DeSantis. So he's in this position of being able to reap the benefits of overturning Roe v. Wade while still not being viewed as harsh on the issue as some of his other GOP counterparts. But when these other GOPers are going to this event and giving their speeches and getting big rounds of applause and lots of admiration for their staunch stance against abortion rights, Trump just can't simply sit back and reap the political benefit of having this sort of ambiguous position that he has. He has to jump on the train and go, no, look, actually, it was me that did this. It was me that overturned Roe v. Wade. And to this small group of evangelical voters, that's going to get him applause and admiration. But what we're seeing is that middle America, independents, suburbanites, and women generally, people who put Trump into the White House in 2016, generally and overwhelmingly are for abortion rights in America. And they believe and it was a setback for women and for women's rights in the United States of America. So what Trump's doing here is he's shooting himself in the foot with that group of people in order to have some short-term applause and admiration from this religious group that he's seeking to court. And I'm not sure why he's doing it. It makes no sense politically. It makes no sense strategically. But I guess what we're seeing on full display is that Trump has no strategy and has very, very little sense in terms of what he decides to do and say on a daily basis, because he could totally stake out his ambiguous position, and yes, people would be pointing out, hey, Trump, you can't be all, I didn't want this to happen now because you appointed the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. And it would be a rightful thing to call him out on that. But Trump is so good at muddying the pot and throwing red herrings and falsehoods, and you get beat over the head with falsehoods and untruths and kernel of truths so much that your original point is lost in the sauce. And we're now the conversation's been diverted, and the focus has been diverted to a bunch of other topics that Trump has brought up. And that's his number one political strength, it is muddying the pot. But when he's going out and saying, yeah, abortion rights, I overturned them, look at me, I did this for you, he's not realizing that sure, in this one room of people, that's gonna win you some applause, but the rest of America that is seeing Trump going out on a limb like this and practically bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade, they're seeing this and they're going, oh my God, the GOP is a party that is simply seeking to take people's rights away, and and they're looking at their daughter and they're looking at women in their life and they're going, I don't want to grow up in a world where I had more rights than my daughter and these other women in my life. Okay, or however they relate. So yeah, not much political strategy here on display from Trump. I'd have to imagine that anybody that does, run the political strategy team for Trump, they have to see stuff like this and go, shut the fuck up, Trump. Shut the F up. Okay, like, you're not doing yourself any favors by going out on a limb and reminding everybody about this. It's like, this is why, like, Trump's brashfulness and his you never know what you're gonna get, it helped him get into the office in 2016 because it was so novel and it was so crazy and zany and people, and it was so unfamiliar in politics. But now, it after years and years and years, we're seeing how it's, being bashful and saying the first thing that comes to your head and wanting to gain the approval of just the people in the room around you, saying whatever you have to say to gain approval of one particular group is not necessarily the best way to do politics and to run a campaign. So yeah, I think that if Donald Trump is ultimately defeated in 2024, which I've been predicting for a while that he will be, people are going to be looking at stuff like this and going, what was Trump thinking? What was he thinking? Or was he thinking at all? Probably not. All right. Ron DeSantis's campaign close to, says Larry Hogan. I mean, this is got to be as far as I've heard anybody go. The state campaign at the moment. So we got this Newsweek article here. It says Ron DeSantis' campaign close to being over. Ex-GOP Maryland DeSantis' hopes of being president, saying his campaign was one of the worst he has ever seen and predicting a swift end to his bid. Wow. One of the worst he's ever seen. That's saying something. There's been a lot of really, really bad campaigns in the GOP. At least we remember Mitt Romney 2012. Wow. So Hogan spoke with CBS News' Major Garrett on Wednesday and commented on DeSantis' campaign so far and how he has handled the pressure of taking on Republican frontrunner President Trump. Hogan has said he believes DeSantis is underperformed and essentially dropped like a rock in the Republican leadership race. Trump has been regularly taking swipes at the Florida governor even before DeSantis officially launched his campaign in May. DeSantis has begun firing back at Trump from the start, Disney, and suffered a dip in popularity. Earlier in June, the Florida governor's campaign criticized Trump for previously backing transgender inclusion years before becoming president. Yeah, because that's really the thing that to attack Trump on. When Trump is just ripping into him day after day after day with the nicknames and the I made you, you wouldn't be nothing without me argument. And Trump's, DeSantis's response is, oh, well, I've been against transgender people long. I'm better to go against the woke mob than you. Like, come on, bro. In an act that some claim was retribution for Disney's opposition to the Don't Say Gay bill, which bans the discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in certain grade schools in Florida, DeSantis targeted the land where Disney World is situated in Orlando. His attempt to divest the company of social privileges and tax breaks ultimately failed. I'm not sure why they're saying in an act that some claims was retribution. It's like obviously clear as day retribution, and DeSantis himself is saying that it was retribution. It's not an act that some were saying. Okay, it was retribution. I think DeSantis has really underperformed. He started out, and we have seen this happen before in other races, as the one getting all the attention, Hogan said. There was wall-to-wall coverage on Fox News. He was the only one other than Trump that was really getting a lot of attention, and he raised a lot of money. He was fairly successful as governor in a big state and got reelected. Excuse me. And then he started making all kinds of mistakes. Yeah, let's pause it here for a second. Let's think back to the 2022 midterms here for a second. So across the country, you had you had Trump endorsed Republican candidates fail and fail and fail, race after race after race. I've talked about this before. Carrie Lake, Herschel Walker, Dr. Oz, Blake Masters, and others, okay, that were pretty winnable races, okay? And but in Florida, you had DeSantis making gains, actually. And in Miami-Dade County, it actually flips to being Democrat for the first time since 2002. And Miami-Dade became a Republican-controlled county as opposed to being a Democrat-controlled county. So DeSantis had a bit of wind in his sails, and there was a lot of talk about him being a potential alternative candidate because his whole brand is based on being this winner, and I win, and I can take politicians to the mat and beat them in the polls, and that's what I am. I'm a winner. Look at how great Florida did in 2022, while the rest of the Republican Party has struggled. And DeSantis had a point. He had a line of attack to follow, but he's completely abandoned it in this chase of demonizing LGBTQ people, because everyone knows that that's the most pressing issue facing our society is LGBT people and people dressing up in drag. Like that's the most important thing facing our society. Everybody obviously knows that. So DeSantis has decided that he's going to make his campaign all about that, not about attacking Trump at all, not about attacking Trump's and Trumpism's detrimental effect on the GOP party at large. No, he hasn't taken that approach. And since then, I don't think DeSantis's political fortunes have evolved or strengthened or become any better since the November 2022 midterms. And in fact, poll after poll after poll is showing that DeSantis's political fortunes have not only not strengthened, but in fact, they're getting a lot worse and worse. I think the campaign is one of the worst I have seen so far, and he's dropped like a rock. Hogan went on to note that some Republican voters have considered shifting away from Trump to see what DeSantis had to offer, but were eventually turned off from the Florida governor. Yeah, some of these people might have been turned on to DeSantis after the midterms. In early June, DeSantis saw his approval rating drop significantly, according to online polling company Civic's dynamic approval rating graph. DeSantis had a net approval rating of negative 19 points, with an average of 55% of respondents disapproving of him, comparing to 36% who had a favorable view of the Republican. I think it's getting close to being over for Ron DeSantis, Hogan said as he reflected on the governor's chances going forward. You can always John McCain pulled a comeback, Bill Clinton pulled a comeback, but at this point, he's heading in the wrong direction. One of the mistakes DeSantis made during his campaign, Hogan pointing to the ongoing battle with Disney, suggesting the Florida governor doesn't connect well with people, and also said that he is not a good debater. He doesn't connect well with people, and he's not a good debater at all. I've covered in some of my past videos. He did close by saying that DeSantis is a smart guy, but hasn't conveyed that in his campaign, and people no longer feel he is the Republican to beat. So, yeah, Larry, I think this is a pretty solid take here from Larry Hogan, and I don't think he said anything that is too clickbaity. He's not trying to just clickbait and just dance on his grave, and he sounds like somebody that wants an alternative to Trump and is disappointed that DeSantis hasn't done better than he has, because it means that the gravity of the party is shifting back to Trump. And a lot of people are hanging their hopes on DeSantis to be able to take a more incisive line of attack. It's failed to materialize in any meaningful way. It's not certainly over for DeSantis. Okay, I'm not going to say his campaign is certainly over and he has a 0% chance to be the nominee. Trump's legal troubles could get worse, to the point that maybe there is some sort of big reckoning. But as time goes on, it seems less and less likely like it's going to happen. And in fact, Trump's chances of becoming the nominee are going up and up and up each day that passes. All right, so we got Antony Blinken going on Meet the Press to discuss the Russian chaos, okay? If you haven't heard, the Wagner mercenary leader led a march to Moscow and was claiming that he was going to he's disappointed with the Russian leadership and wanted changes in terms of how the Russian leadership is made up. And this is a big surprise, and in a country where Putin's power is based on sort of him being viewed as inevitable and invincible and unfightable, and you best not even try to stir up the pot because Putin's just too strong and there's no way to tangibly. Well, all of that thinking has been changed in the short span of about agree to pull his troops back and to not continue his march to Moscow. So bloodshed was avoided in the city of Moscow, but Putin's political strength and just the way he's viewed generally by people in his country, how that has been changed or harmed remains to be seen, but it could end up being very significant, the events of the last couple of days. So let's listen to Antony Blinken here talking a bit in detail about his assessment of what's been going on in Russia.
And joining me now is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Secretary Blinken, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks,
I'll
Chuck.
be right back.
Let me just start with your observations. What did we just see over the weekend? And the reason I ask that is because, look, this is a country that misinformation is a feature, not a bug. Sometimes there's theater. What should we believe with what we just witnessed in the last 48 hours in Russia?
Well, Chuck, if you put this in perspective, what we've seen is extraordinary. Think about it this way. 16 months ago, Russian forces were on the doorstep of Kyiv in Ukraine, believing they would take the capital in a matter of days and erase the country from the map as an independent country. Now, what we've seen is Russia having to defend Moscow, its capital, against mercenaries of its own making. So in and of itself, that's extraordinary. And in so doing, we've also seen rise to the surface profound questions about the very premises for this Russian aggression against Ukraine that Prigozhin surfaced very publicly, as well as a direct challenge to Putin's authority. So I think we've seen more cracks emerge in the Russian facade. It is too soon to tell exactly where they go. and when they get there. But certainly, we have all sorts of new questions that Putin is going to have to address in the weeks and months ahead.
Wow. All right. So next clip I got here for you is Blinken's assessment on Belarus President Lukashenko's involvement in the deal, which apparently Lukashenko had a very prevalent presence in negotiating, which is quite strange given that Putin is, he wants to be seen as the strong man and the big guy in charge. So people are wondering where would Lukashenko factor into Putin's decision making?
And it does.
The president of Belarus apparently mediated this. That seemed startling because this is somebody that is portrayed by many Western analysts as simply a puppet of Putin. Puppets don't often mediate their puppeteers here. So what do you make of this?
One second here. I'm going to refresh the video. It's kind of skipping a bit.
And joining me now is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken.
Sorry, guys.
They're puppeteers here. So what do you make of this? Are we underestimating Belarus here?
I think it's important for us not to speculate, and I suspect that we'll learn more and more in the days and weeks ahead, including the actual details of whatever deal was struck. It may be that Putin didn't want to debase himself to the level of negotiating directly with Prigozhin, so it was useful to get someone like Lukashenko into this on his behalf. But again, that is speculation. We want to avoid that. We want to focus on the facts, and we want to keep the focus on Ukraine.
Okay, so we don't exactly know, is what Blinken is saying, exactly how the Belarus president factored in. It's just interesting that he was involved at all. So next up, the clip I got here for you is Blinken talking about Russia's nuclear posture. And this is a concern that a lot of people were having as the chaos was unfolding. Russia has the second most nuclear weapons in the world, if I'm not mistaken, just going off the top of my head. Someone please tell me if I'm wrong about that. But I believe that they have the second most nuclear weapons. And a lot of people are going, well, if the Russian government is in like chaos and they're like there's an attempted overthrow or an attempted an attempt to change the leadership of the Russian government. What does that mean for Russia's massive nuclear arsenal that they have? And could one of the control of the nuclear arsenal be up in the air at any given moment? There's a concern that a lot of people had. So here's Blinken's thoughts on it.
Questions that he has to find answers for.
I know that there are no changes to their nuclear posture. Was there open communication on that front, military to military, on the nuclear issue over the weekend or not?
Chuck, I'm not going to get into what diplomatic or other communications we had with Russia, but of course, we're very focused anytime there is instability in a major country like Russia, particularly one with nuclear weapons. There has been no change in their nuclear posture. There's no change in our nuclear posture, but it's something that we're watching very carefully.
So no change with the nukes. That's good news for a lot of different reasons, obviously. So next up here, we got Blinken talking about the opportunity for the Ukrainian counteroffensive to benefit from this instability.
Does this go to full speed ahead for the Ukraine counteroffensive? Is this a moment of opportunity?
Chuck, it is full speed ahead for the counteroffensive, but they have a plan, and they have a very deliberate plan. They're prosecuting that plan, and we have more than 50 countries that continue to support them in that effort to make sure that they have everything they need to do as well as they can in taking back the land that was seized from them by Russia over the last 16 months. That is in train, but it's going to take some time, weeks, maybe even months. Yeah. There are very strong defenses that the Russians have built up in recent months that the Ukrainians are working their way through. But at the end of the day, the bottom line really is this, and it's the reason that Ukraine will prevail. This is about their land. This is about their future. This is about their freedom, not Russia's. And that is, in a sense, the real difference maker that you're going to see unfold.
All right. Lastly, we have Blinken on a potential China-Cuba base that has been rumored to potentially be in development. That would be a Chinese base stationed right outside of United States borders. So obviously, national security concern. Let's hear what our Secretary of State Antony Blinken has, and then this will be the last clip I got for you guys.
Are you going to prevent China from having a military base on the island of Cuba?
We have been not only looking, but also engaging in a number of countries over the last couple of years where China is trying to get a foothold. And we've been engaged diplomatically in a number of places.
Yeah.
And we've had some success in either preventing that, delaying that, or turning that around. We continue to do that. I've raised that directly with my Chinese counterparts. They know where we stand on that issue.
I noticed you say you raised it.
All right. So that's Tony Blinken. Some really interesting insight on the chaos. Obviously, Blinken is going to be very, very liberal in what he says. It's an understatement. These guys are always conscious of making sure that they're not saying anything that could be misconstrued or later turns out to be untrue. So my takeaway here is that the U.S. government and even Blinken himself here, they don't necessarily have all of the answers for the general public yet as to how this is going to play out and how this has affected the Ukraine-Russia conflict and how this could affect the long-term viability of Putin's regime. I think they're still figuring out a lot of this stuff with us, and they don't necessarily have the scoop, if you will, on some of these questions. So we're really going to just have to wait and see what's going to go down in the next few days, the next few weeks. Is Putin's regime going to be significantly challenged in any sort of way? And is this chink in the armor that has been exposed, does this chink in the armor spread and damage the rest of the suit of armor slowly but surely? We'll all just have to wait and see. All right, so AI generation images and ChatGPT has been rising in popularity in the last few months. And now what we have is political people and people who are seeking to run for office are using in Midjourney AI image generation to create fake images that bolster their political claims and their political grievances. Now, this could be a huge issue given just how easy it is to create any sort of misinformation you could possibly think of using AI image generation. And it's for misuse and for people to mislead and misinform potential voters about very key issues and very key decisions they're going to support. So we're going to go ahead and hop into the New York Times. One second. There we go. All right, New York Times. AI's use in election sets off a scramble for guardrails. Gaps in campaign rules allow politicians to spread images and messaging generated by increasingly powerful artificial intelligence technology. So look at this right here. There's an image generated by AI. It says fake images of downtown Toronto generated by AI illustrated a mayoral's candidate's campaign material. An election who vows to clear homeless encampments released a set of campaign promises illustrated by artificial intelligence, including fake dystopian images of people camped out on downtown street and a fabricated image of tents set up in a park. Realistic looking rendering on Instagram of fake robbers rampaging through a jewelry shop. We got that queued up for you here. So here's this fake AI generated image of these GTA looking dudes who look like they just were in a GTA online session, doing a GTA heist. Like, totally fake, no real people, no real crime that is being depicted. Yet, if you were somebody that was unbeknownst to the image's true nature, you would not have any. There's no reason to look at this and think twice and go, oh, this is certainly fake, or this is certainly made up. You know what I mean? This is very convincing, very, very, very convincing. And maybe this guy's weird face right here in the middle, that might throw me off there. But, you know, in the world of social media and in the world of scroll, people aren't stopping and analyzing every single image that they're looking at. So yeah, this is the New Zealand image here. In Chicago, the runner-up in the mayoral vote in April complained that a Twitter account masquerading as a news outlet had used AI to clone his voice in a way that suggested he condoned police brutality. Wow. So not just image generation, but also AI tampering with people's voices to make realistic sounding clips of a candidate talking. You know, that could be just as dangerous and ripe for misuse as image generation. What began a few months ago as a slow drip of fundraising emails and promotional images composed by AI for political campaigns has turned into a steady stream of campaign materials created by the technology, rewriting the political playbook for democratic elections around the world. Increasingly, lawmakers say setting up new guardrails such as legislation reining in synthetically generated ads should be an urgent priority. Existing defenses, such as social media rules and services that claim to detect AI content, have failed to do much to slow down the tide. Yeah, ever since Cambridge Analytica in 2016 and that whole debacle with Facebook and how they basically allowed Russia to manipulate its platform, yeah, I don't trust any social media companies to adequately monitor and in a efficient way take down content that is misleading and harmful. I don't trust them at all, especially with Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. Yeah, we can't trust these guys. As the 2024 presidential race starts to heat up, some of the campaigns are already testing the technology. The Republican National Committee released a video with artificially generated images of doomsday scenarios after President Biden announced his re-election bid. I remember this now. You guys can go and watch this video. It's crazy, this weird dystopian stuff that is coming out of these AI image generators. While Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida posted fake images of Trump and Anthony Fauci, the former health official. The Democratic Party experimented with fundraising messages drafted by artificial intelligence in the spring and found that they were often more effective at encouraging engagement in donations than copy written entirely by humans. So this isn't an issue of, oh, we're having some AI stuff sprinkled in here and there, and starting to, seeing just a sprinkling of AI. No, the AI is often better at creating incisive, emotionally triggering images and emotionally triggering ad campaigns than humans. Oops. I went back. Here we are. Some politicians see artificial intelligence as a way to help reduce campaign costs by using it to create instant responses to debate questions or attack ads or to analyze data that might otherwise require extensive experts. At the same time, the technology has the potential. An unflattering fake video, an email blast full of false narratives churned out by a computer, or a fabricated image of urban decay can reinforce prejudices and widen the partisan divide by showing voters what they expect to see, experts say. The technology is already far more powerful than manual manipulation. Not perfect, but fast improving and easy to learn. In May, the chief executive of OpenAI, Sam Altman, whose company helped kick off an artificial intelligence boom last year with its popular ChatGPT chatbot, told a Senate subcommittee that he was nervous about election season. He said that technology's ability to manipulate, to persuade, to provide sort of one-on-one interactive disinformation was a significant area of concern. This is the guy who created ChatGPT. Okay. The guy who created ChatGPT is saying that this is an issue for concern. I'm not sure who else's opinion could be more insightful. Representative Yvette D. Clarke, a Democrat from New York, said in a statement last month that the 2024 election cycle is poised to be the first election where AI-generated content is prevalent. She and other congressional Democrats, including Amy Klobuchar, have introduced legislation that would require political ads that use artificially generated material to carry a disclaimer. A similar bill in Washington state was recently signed in. Already bills being signed into law to put some sort of disclaimer. Hey, this is created. Like a pretty good idea to me. Seems like we would want to know what's real, what's being created by a computer, what images are depicting reality, what images are fake. That seems pretty important to me. Not just in terms of, it's double, triple, quadruple important when you're talking about elections and disinformation and how people are being informed to make decisions on which bubble to fill in the ballot box. It makes it even more important, but it's important just generally, in my opinion, for society to figure out how are we going to distinguish between what is AI and what is human-made. The American Association of Political Consultants recently condemned the use of deepfake content in political campaigns as a violation of its ethics code. People are going to be tempted to push the envelope and see where they can take things, said Larry Hainu. I can't say that last name. The group's incoming president. As with any tool, there can be bad uses and bad actions using them to lie to voters, to mislead voters, to create a belief in something that doesn't exist. The technology's recent intrusion into politics came as a surprise in Toronto, a city that supports a thriving ecosystem of artificial intelligence research and takes place on Monday. A conservative candidate in the race, Anthony Furey, a former news columnist, recently laid out his platform in a document that was dozens of pages long and filled with synthetically generated content to help him make his tough on crime position. A closer look really showed that many of the images were not real. One laboratory scene featured scientists who looked like alien blobs. A woman in another rendering wore a pin on her cardigan with illegible lettering. Similar markings appeared in the image of a caution tape at a construction site. Mr. Furey's campaign also used a synthetic portrait of a seated woman with two arms crossed and a third arm touching her chin. What is this? This isn't okay. This is not okay. Okay, this is not good. If this stuff is going to be, if this is an image that they freaking used for campaign ads, I mean, you can't see this third arm sticking out of this lady's chest, and that's not normal. Okay, that's not good. If people can't see through this and see that this is And that's bad. All right. It's like, geez, I want to see the ones that were dismissed and not used. If these are the ones that are being used, if this guy wins the mayoral election, we are in deep, deep trouble, folks. Deep, deep trouble. The other candidates mined that image for laughs in a debate this month. We're actually using real pictures, said Josh Matlow, who showed a photo of his family and added that no one in our pictures have 3 arms. That's funny. Still, the sloppery renderings were used to amplify Mr. Fury's argument. He gained enough momentum to become one of the most recognizable names in an election with more than 100 candidates. In the same debate, he acknowledged using the technology in his campaign, adding that we're going to have a couple of laughs here as we proceed with learning more about AI. Yeah, here's the thing, okay? I love using AI image generators and to create crazy, zany, weird-looking images that are obviously crazy, zany, weird images. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with creating AI images of people with 3 arms. And there's nothing wrong with laughing at when AI generates obviously fake, strange images when we are telling it to generate something totally different. It is kind of funny. Like, there is a certain humor in it, element of humor. But when we're talking about elections, when we're talking about decisions that people are going to make to put people into power to make decisions on everything under the sun that politicians make decisions on, it kind of goes from being funny and being look, can you believe that this lady has 3 arms? It goes from being funny to being something that is really inherently wrong with our politics in this world, and inherently something that people should stop and think, do we want this technology to be prevalently used in politics? Do we want it? Because we already know how much misinformation there is in politics today in the United States, and with the help of AI, this misinformation, we could just pour gasoline on the fire that is Fox News, and the potential for the misinformation to become even larger than it was in 2016 and in 2020, the potential is there, and something needs to be done about it. Yes, it's funny that these images are being used by actual politicians, but we need to stop and realize that this has the potential to have real world detriment and real world consequences for tons and tons. Political experts worry that artificial intelligence, when misused, could have a corrosive effect on the democratic process. Misinformation is a constant risk, and one of Mr. Fury's rivals said in a debate that while members of her staff use ChatGPT, they always fact-checked its output. If someone can create noise, build uncertainty, or develop false narratives, that could be an effective way to sway voters and win the race, Daryl M. West, a senior fellow for the Brookings Institution, wrote in a report last month. Since the 2024 presidential election may come down to tens of thousands of voters in a few states, anything that could nudge people in one direction or another could end up being decisive. Increasingly sophisticated AI content is appearing more frequently on social networks that have been largely unwilling or unable to police it, said Ben Coleman, the chief executive of Reality Defender, a company that offers services to detect AI. The feeble oversight allows unlabeled synthetic content to do irreversible damage before it is addressed, he said. And here's the thing. Yeah, like I was saying earlier in the video, I don't trust Facebook to deal with this stuff. I don't trust Twitter to deal with this stuff in a meaningful way. And even if it is meaningfully dealt with down the line, that doesn't mean that somebody can't post a doctored AI image. And let's say it gets 10 million views, okay? And down the line, it's removed. Let's say it's posted and it exists for a week, and then a week later Facebook or Twitter removes it based on, this is obviously an AI generated image that is having detrimental political effect. Well, guess what? There's a bunch of people that they've already seen it. They've already had their worldview potentially informed by this misleading fake image. And by the time Facebook goes and removes it or whatever, they're already looking at some other fake doctored image that Facebook has to remove the next week. So they're not able to police this content in real time. They're not able to do it. And even if they say they're able to do it, I don't believe them. So this is really going to be up to the government, I believe, to make laws and to draw a line in the sand of what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. We can't just trust these social media companies to do it for us. Explaining to millions of users that the content they already saw and shared was fake well after the fact is too little too late. Exactly. I should have just read this next little part here. Exactly what I'm thinking. You can't go back in time and redo, okay? And time marches forward, and people's perceptions that they've already been informed in the past, it's really hard to go back and go, oh, well, that's fake. For several days this month, a Twitch live stream has run a non-stop, not safe for work debate between synthetic versions of Biden and Trump. Both were clearly identified as simulated AI entities, but if an organized political campaign created such content and spread it widely without any disclosure, it could easily degrade the value of real material, disinformation experts said. Politicians could shrug off accountability and claim that authentic footage of compromising actions was not real, a phenomenon known as the liar's dividend. Hold on, I'm going to read this again. I'm not sure I understand what this just said. Politicians could shrug off accountability and claim that the authentic footage of compromising actions was not real. A phenomenon known. Oh, I see what it's saying. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's another potentially ripe for misinformation part of all of this, is that now we live in a world where a politician could be filmed doing something that's true and that really did happen and that really should face scrutiny and really should face backlash and should be questioned. But now we live in a world where this stuff's getting so sophisticated, politicians could simply go, oh, that's fake AI image. That's a fake AI generated image. That's not real. That's generated by AI. I would never do that. I would never be caught doing that thing that I was videoed caught doing. I would never do that. That's just somebody faking that event happening. Not good. Ordinary citizens could make their own fakes, while others could entrench themselves more deeply in polarized information bubbles, believing only what sources they chose to believe. So if you had that's just a fake AI generated image, and then you have experts going, no, this is not generated by AI, this and that and this and that is why. This is 100% a verifiable real video or image. What the article is posting here is that you're going to have people that are so divided, and they look at politics through such a partisan lens that the experts saying, no, that in fact is a real video. The people on the right or whatever, they wouldn't believe the experts, and they would believe the politician that is claiming that it is a fake video that's being shared. So it wouldn't even matter. The experts coming out and debunking and saying that this is fake, or even Facebook or Twitter coming out and saying that this is fake, wouldn't necessarily even matter in terms of combating the disinformation because people are going to believe the narrative and the people who are saying the things that go along with their narrative of how they view the world. If people can't trust their eyes and their ears, they must say, "Who knows?" Josh A. Goldstein, a research fellow at Georgetown University's Center for Security and Emerging Technology, wrote in an email that could foster a move from healthy skepticism that encourages good habits like lateral reading and searching for reliable sources to an unhealthy skepticism that it is impossible to know what is true. Oh, wow. If you're still watching, thank you for sticking with me through reading all of that. I know it's a lot of information, but this could be something that is really, really a huge issue heading into future elections. And I think that if laws are not made to and efficiently police it, I fear what the outcome could be for our elections, not only in this country, but in the future. I have hope that the U.S. government is taking this seriously, and there are signs that, this is being taken seriously, and that the potential for misuse is being recognized. Like in Washington State, they're already implementing laws. I just know that sometimes the government can be really, really slow at catching up to technology. And we have a new technology that emerges, and it's not until 10, 15, 20 years down the line, efficient legislation that polices how people use a certain technology. So the government needs to buck the trend of taking a long ass time to catch up to wake up and smell the coffee and catch up to modern technological advancements. Figure this out sooner rather than later. Okay, because for all the reasons in that article that we mentioned, this could be a really, really, really dangerous tool for people seeking to hurt the political candidates across the guys. And this one, I want to thank you so much for watching the show. It was a lot of fun to make it. I'll catch you in the next one on Tuesday. And until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. All right, peace out.